Well, welcome to Think Big, Do Good with the Missouri Farm Bureau. And we have another special guest joining us here this month. This is Sara Wyant. Sara is the owner of Agri-Pulse Communications. She is a farm media person from way back in the day. Small town farm girl from Iowa. Tell me about your background.
I grew up outside of Marengo, Iowa, which is in the southeast corner of the state. Originally, we had livestock and crops, and later on, just the crops, corn and soybeans primarily. But it was an opportunity to learn not only about agriculture, but early on, my folks were active in politics in terms of just wanting people to know that elected officials work for us. Mm-hmm. And so my dad and mom would invite our congressman out to the farm, and even when I was younger, I'd have a chance to listen in on the conversations. And I think kind of that combination really helped drive my later interest, not only in journalism, but in how journalism can have an impact on educating people to be more involved in the political process.
So talk about growing up on the farm. I mean, there had to be a few adventures with you and your siblings that keeps that passion for agriculture alive.
Yes, I'm the youngest of 4 children, and there were always a lot of fun things that we did, you know, whether it was playing in farm ponds or fishing, mm-hmm. or being able to raise our pet animals. Mm-hmm. Everything was a great joy to be raised with the opportunity to see things grow. I love to garden, still do, and I help my mom a lot in the garden, and I had a horse, originally some shepherd ponies, but later on a palomino, and uh-huh. So it was a great upbringing. And you know, my parents, again, were very influential in making sure that we all read a lot and had opportunities to travel and see different things. And I think that, combined with, you know, a lot of small towns don't mm-hmm. have huge schools either. Mm-hmm. We were still, Marengo still had its consolidated school, but it was based in town, and mm-hmm. The town's about 3,000 people. My class was about 60 kids. So, you know, you got to know everybody really well.
Right.
And I think that we were so blessed, even though we were that small, to have great teachers. Mm-hmm. They let you dream big and mm-hmm. let you think about the possibilities. And I think that's really what's so important about our educational system in so many small towns, when you do have people like that who will give you that opportunity to explore.
Now, you showed us a picture earlier, and this was a picture of you as a kid holding a horse, and it sounds like that had some significance to you as well.
It did. My grandfather lived real close to our farmhouse, and that's where we kept our horses in between the pasture. And I had this little Shetland pony that I was trying to rope train, and he looked at me one day and he said, you know, if you can pick up that little colt, you can do anything you ever want to do in life. And I looked at him, and of course, you know, yeah, I was about 5 years old, but I picked up that horse and little colt, and it was just, it was inspiring to think of the possibilities again uh-huh. that you can have and all the encouragement in the world. Of course, as the horse got bigger, I couldn't carry it up, but it was the inspiration that encouraged me to try big things.
So when you graduated high school and went on to college, did you immediately pursue a degree in journalism?
I did, and mm-hmm. it was one of those weird things where so many kids were going to college and they weren't quite sure mm-hmm. what they wanted to do. But I loved doing the journalism in high school, and I found that Iowa State had some opportunities to explore a lot of different kinds of journalism, whether it was broadcast journalism, magazine, newspaper, the yearbook, all those different things. And so that's what I signed up for, and right away jumped into the J School stuff, and I loved it. Uh-huh. I really did, and it was such a good program, giving you that practical experience. Uh-huh. I joined Wallace's Farmer as their first intern, uh-huh. and they offered me opportunities to not only do on-farm interviews, but make sure that I was involved in editorial planning meetings and coming up with my own story ideas, and I was hooked.
Yeah.
So I finished my senior year, and then they offered me a job right out of college. The job they gave me was new, and it was to talk about the social and cultural things going on at the farm, because I started in 1980. And we all know what was going on in agriculture in the 1980s. There were a lot of suicides, divorces, people going belly up. And it was a very difficult time in agriculture. So my job was to be the family living editor and to travel around not only Iowa, but Illinois, Indiana, Wisconsin, and to talk to farm families about how they were dealing with these tough challenges and what they were doing for both coping and how to try to keep the family together. So I wrote about, farm family divorce, about people that were having trouble finding spouses out in the countryside. And I wrote a really tough story about a farmer who had, at that time it was called the Farmers Home Administration, was called the lender of last resort out of USDA. And it was a young farm family, and they had just gotten a 40-year farm ownership loan, but it had been pulled after a year and a half, and they had nowhere to go. And this young farmer opened up all of his books to me, which, as you know, most farmers are so very private, and they don't want to share any of that stuff. But he just showed me everything he had done, and it was like, I don't know how the guy could have done anything any better, other than having weather cooperate differently. But it really showcased the plight of so many farmers at that time who were trying to succeed, and sometimes through no fault of their own just couldn't make it happen. So that story was picked up, and I remember the editor of the Des Moines Register called my boss at that time and was just like, this is the most extensive piece I've ever seen. And was really kind of shocked that we had done that kind of in-depth and insightful piece on, again, what was happening from the political side as well as on the farm economy.
That sounds amazing. First of all, an opportunity for such a young reporter to have that chance to do that kind of story, but also a very weighty issue for a young person fresh out of college to cover.
Yeah, and again, back to your theme here, if you don't limit yourself and you let yourself think about, well, really, how can I tackle this tough assignment? How can I bring an understanding to people through my writing? And it sometimes takes a lot of work. Sometimes it's not a story you turn around in a couple of days or even a week. But that's kind of been my MO throughout a lot of things, as I've continued to tackle some very difficult stories with Agri-Pulse. And I just think readers deserve it. And so it's worth the effort.
And you mentioned Agri-Pulse. So Agri-Pulse wasn't back in the 80s. Agri-Pulse came along a little bit later. So where did the inspiration for launching this new media company come from?
Some of it was from those stories that I was tackling, those very difficult stories that sometimes people were uncomfortable with. And I thought that going out and really pursuing my passion about marrying, again, the political side with the agricultural side had a opportunity. So I originally left the company after just a few years and launched Agri-Pulse as a print version. And, every 2 weeks I published, and which at that time, before the internet, was pretty timely. But, kind of fast forward through that time, I continued to produce that newsletter, and then I freelanced, and I did a lot of things just to write about the things I wanted to write about. And then, again, jumping through kind of the career history here, had the chance to rejoin Farm Progress. Again, I'd been an intern, and then I'd been a family living editor. Had a chance to come back to be the vice president of editorial over all the people that used to be my bosses.
Oh, wow.
So that was an interesting time.
I'm sure.
In '95. And so that brought me to a whole new level of understanding of the publishing business, all the things that are involved with 50 staff members and a production team, and at that time just going through a lot of other changes in the industry. We were starting to see the internet. We were seeing a lot of digital coverage, and also a lot of consolidation in the media industry as well.
Very much so.
So that led to changes at Farm Progress when I was there. And at that time, the farm economy started to go through another downturn. And then we had to start cutting jobs. That was probably the most difficult part of my career ever, because these are people who were esteemed editors in each of their respective states. And unfortunately, it was my job to right-size the editorial part of the company and to make sure that we were going to be successful long-term. And that meant, we couldn't have as many people. And so I went through a couple of layers of that assignment, and eventually my position was cut as well. And so I'm out looking for a job with two kids who are going to need to make sure that their mother has some income, and did some consulting. Had a chance to visit with some of my old clients at Agri-Pulse, and they said, we really liked it when you did your newsletter. And that led to relaunching all digital, so I didn't have to go to the printer anymore, didn't have to go to the post office. And I also wanted to switch to subscription only. A lot of people may not realize this, but State Farm magazines didn't charge very much. They were basically financed by their advertisers.
Right.
And I wanted to produce a quality product that people would be willing to pay for. And it's not that I didn't want to do advertising, but it was just me to start.
Right.
So it wasn't anybody else to help me sell anything.
You don't have a sales team to hit the road.
No. So that was really the start of Agri-Pulse Round 2. And here we are 20 years later.
Wow. So what about the future? I mean, we're Agri-Pulse, as you say, 20 years. Where do we go from here? You got a vision?
Oh, yeah. Well, I have always had these things that I've wanted to do. And so within the last few years, despite having these kind of ups and downs in the farm economy that you referenced, we've been able to continue to grow our circulation paid, and also bring in advertising. Having my husband, Alan Johnson, come home after he retired from USDA and launch our advertising side of the business has made a huge difference. And now bringing our son into the operation, Jason, he's currently leading up advertising and marketing. That's made a big difference. At the end of the day, it all comes down to really having those people that can grow and support you on this journey. And we've been so blessed to be able to have that, Janet.
Now, as we kind of start to wind things down here, I also want to point out that while you have been a reporter in the agriculture world for your career, you still have a foot in the production agriculture world as well too, back home on the home farm ground.
Yeah, it's been delightful for me to go back, and I miss my mom and dad terribly, but after my mom passed, I had a chance to buy the family farm that's been the family for over a century.
Wow.
And so I've spent a lot of time trying to make sure that we have tried to make it more sustainable for the next century. And we've got a great young renter on the home farm who has really, we're in sync with our vision. We switched to no-till. We planted cover crops. I say we, he does all the work. But I went in and I harvested some timber and I've replanted walnut trees. We've put a lot of conservation into the ground. So I'm really working on trying to make sure that we are going to leave that ground much better than even when I took over, and hopefully be able to keep it in the family, not only for my children, but my grandkids. I'm just delightful to be able to share with them too.
So as we wrap things up, Sara, the title of the program is Think Big, Do Good. So when I say think big, do good, what comes to mind to you?
Well, so many things come to mind, but I would just encourage so many people to, if you're living in a small town still, think about letting it live after you do. I still am very active in my small town in Marengo, Iowa, and Al and I are both very active in donating to the community in North Dakota where he grew up, also at North Dakota State, at Iowa State, and giving back. it's just good for the heart. And it doesn't all have to be financially.
Right.
It can be just volunteering, offering guidance, directing people to networks that perhaps can offer greater financial backing. But we need small towns across America. It makes us stronger. It's really the lifeblood of our country. And unless you take positive action to make sure that those small towns can continue, nobody else is going to. So that would be my advice for anybody watching this is don't forget your small town, keep reinvesting in it. You know, we love Camdenton, Missouri, where we're at now, and we want to see a lot of growth here, but we have not forgotten our roots.
So again, you can check out agri-pulse.com. Good time to check it out just because we're in a farm bill year, and of course we're also in a presidential election year, so a lot of information available to you. Thanks for joining us for this Think Big, Do Good with the Missouri Farm Bureau.